Right, guys, so let's go ahead now and look at this. We are looking at 7.2c, quadratic functions part 2. Now, last lesson, what we did is we looked at what happens. So let's go and write this really quickly. Y equals a parentheses x minus h squared plus k. We focus on when we had a values and k values, which dealt with vertical shifts with the k value and direction and width with the a value. Well, now what we're going to do is jump in and look at the h value, which shifts us left to right. Now here we go. It says the graph of y equals x squared and y equals x plus 5 in parentheses squared are shown to the right. So you can see this green one. It's kind of been shifted over a handful of units. So how does the graph y equals x plus 5 parentheses squared compare to the graph y equals x squared? Well, you can see, guys, the graph of y equals x plus 5 parentheses c squared is 5 units to the left from the graph y equals x squared. Now, what I want us to do is predict what if it, instead of a minus, what if instead of a plus, it went to the left, plus, it went to the left. Predict what would it be if it was y equals x minus 5 parentheses squared. How would the graph comparison look to y equals x squared? Well, what do you guys think? If it is plus, it went to the left. My guess is since it's minus, it would be shifted to the right. Shifted to the right. So let's go ahead and plug these in and see what happens. Now, I want you guys to notice that these values on the previous lesson, you had 0 in the center. These ones are different, and we're choosing these values for you. So let's look what happens here. If I had 3 minus 5 to the second power, 3 minus 5 is negative 2, and negative 2 to the second power is 4. And then here we have 4 minus 5 to the second power. 4 minus 5 is negative 1, and negative 1 to the second power is 1. 5 minus 5 is 0, and 0 to the second power, or 0 times 0 is just 0. 6 minus 5 is 1, and 1 times 1 is 1. And the last one would be 7 minus 5, which is 2. And 2 to the second power is 4. Once again, what we talked about yesterday, or last lesson, was symmetry. You see how we have that these are the same answer. And here, if this is the center, 1 above and 1 below 5 will have the same answer. 2 below and 2 above 5 will have the same answer. So when I plug these in, I go over 3 up 4, over 4 up 1, over 5 up 0, over 6 up 1, and over 7 up 5. And when you look at this, you can tell that our graph over here was shifted over 4 units. So our prediction was correct. So the parabola shifted to the right 5 units. Shifted to the right 5 units. So now let's go and look at this. We're going to combine A and B values, okay? A and H values. So this 1/3, I really want you guys to be able to know what that 1/3 does to the graph. Since it's approaching 0, getting closer to 0, my graph is going to get wider. And what about this plus 1? The plus 1 is in the parentheses, and remember that's when it shifts right or left. So let's see what happens here. If I have y equals 1/3 parentheses 2 plus 1 to the second power, and we're just doing orders of operation of PEMDAS. So inside the parentheses, it tells me to do 2 plus 1, which is 3, to the second power is 9, and 1/3 of 9 is 3. Let's go and look at this now. Y equals 1/3, negative 1 plus 1 squared. Negative 1 plus 1 is 0. 0 to the second power is 0, and 1/3 of 0 is just 0. And last one, y equals 1/3 of -4 plus 1 squared. -4 plus 1 is -3. -3 times -3 is 9. And 1/3 of 9 is 3. So we're only doing 3 values there. So over here I go over 2, up 1, 2, 3. Then I go over -1, 0. And then -4, up 1, 2, 3. And guys, as you can see, this graph is a lot wider than before. Now, why is my graph wider? Well, let's start with the first part. So the 1/3 makes the graph wider. And then the +1 inside the parentheses shifts graph to the left. Shifts graph to the left. Okay, so now what we're going to have, this one, same idea. We're going to do one more of these and we're going to put all our thoughts on one sheet of paper here. I have a negative in front of the parentheses. This is my a value. Does anyone want to take a guess what that a value, or what the negative a value does? If you guessed it shifts it down, you're correct. So let's go ahead and look at this now. We're going to plug in all these values here. So we're going to have negative parentheses 4 minus 2 to the second power. 4 minus 2 is 2 to the second power is 4. 4 times that negative is -4. Here we have negative parentheses 3 minus 2 to the second power. 3 minus 2 is 1. 1 to the second power is just 1. Times -1 is -1. Oh, darling, sorry, my daughter's yelling a lot. A little too noisy. Papa's working, okay? So negative parentheses 2 minus 2 to the second power. So let's start inside the parentheses. 2 minus 2 is 0. 0 to the second power is 0. 0 times negative is still 0. All right, now we're going to have negative parentheses 1 minus 2 to the second power. 1 minus 2 is -1, and -1 times -1 is +1. Then I have that negative out in front, that makes it -1. Last one, 0 minus 2 is -2 to the second power is +4, times that -1 is -4. So let's go ahead and graph these now. We go over 4, down 4, over 3, down 1. 0, 0 is right there. Excuse me, 2, that's not correct. 2, 0 is right here. Then we go 1, -1, and then over 0, down 4. Now here, guys, my graph is not any more wider. There's no a value. It's still the same as 1, but the direction makes it point down. So the negative a value makes my graph open down. Makes my it's called a parabola. Shift down. And the -2, so the -2 shifts my graph 2 units to the right. The -2 shifts my graph 2 units to the right. So let's put all this together now. What does the a control in the graph of f of x equals a parentheses x minus h parentheses squared plus k? Well, let's go ahead and look at these. When the a value is positive, the graph points up. So if I were to make a rough sketch of this, it would just look like this. The graph goes up. But when the a value is negative, the graph points down. So it would look like this. When the a value is increasing, when it's getting further away from 0, this would look like a more narrow graph. And when my a value is decreasing, meaning it's getting closer to 0. We're not talking about the negative numbers, just a positive or a negative number getting closer to 0, it's going to be a wider graph. So if I were to compare these two, like y equals 10x squared versus y equals 1/2 x squared, this would make my graph go wider. All right, now let's go and look at the k value. When the k value is positive, it's a vertical shift up. So if I looked at y equals x squared plus 3, that plus 3 would make me go up 3 units. But when the k value is negative, that's a vertical shift down. So for instance, y equals x squared minus 2 would be like this. The graph is still pointing up because the a value is positive, but it's shifted down 2 units. Right, almost done here now. Where it says the h value is subtracted. So what we're doing here, guys, we're looking at something like x minus 2. When we're subtracting, it's opposite inside absolute values and inside parentheses, where it's going to be a horizontal shift right. So when it's subtracting, it would go to the right a certain amount of units. And then the last one, when we are adding, when the h value is being added, for instance, y equals x plus 5 squared, this would be a horizontal shift to the left. So let's go ahead now and look at these. We have 3 of these. I want to compare all these to a basic graph y equals x squared. Right here it says, how does, without graphing, explain in words how the graph y equals x plus 8 in parentheses squared compares to the graph y equals x squared. Well, the only difference is this plus h. That plus 8 is a h value, and I am adding. So let's see, I'm adding an h value, which means it's going to be a horizontal shift of 8 units to the left. Eight units to the left. Now this one has 2 parts to it. It has an a value of 3 and an h value of negative 2. Well, the 3 is bigger than 1. It's going away from 0, so the 3 makes the graph more narrow, while the minus 2, while the negative 2 is a horizontal shift to the right, 2 units. All right, guys, last one. I have this x plus 4 in the parentheses. The plus 4 in the parentheses is a shift to the left 4 units. While the negative 5, it's the k value, is a shift down 4 units. All right, guys, that's all I have for you today. So I want you to finish both these lessons, and then you guys can start your homework, okay?